We're back again. This one, we're going to be creating a contract based on information in an Excel spreadsheet. If you're in consultancy, professional services, your contracts are probably rather similar, or your proposals, but each time they're probably a little bit different too. And the pricing is probably complicated. So without further ado, let's dive in.
What does actually CPQ mean?
So yeah, I mean, this industry term, there's a lot of tools out there, I think like Proposify, for example, which will generate these quotes. And what that really does is you have your catalog of products and services. And what you're looking to do is pull those products and services or a selection of those into a proposal document. Obviously, pricing needs to be right, so accurate pricing, but other things which might also impact the investment, such as expenses and taxes, just depending on the jurisdiction. And then finally, taking this information together and putting it into a quote. Now, one of the challenges I've seen with the other tools available out there, they're cloud tools outside of the Microsoft cloud. We're a Microsoft partner. So for me, that means moving data out of a place which I know is safe and secure and protected. And now I've got two sources of information. But the second thing is a lot of them push out PDFs when really, if you're in professional services or in consultancy like we are, often when that quote's generated or that proposal's created, you still want to go and change some of it yourself, maybe change the narrative, maybe put some branding on there as well. So really, if I can create a quote, which is in Word, that would be fantastic.
Let's have a look at it. Let's go and fire up the demo environment again.
Okay.
So yeah, as we said, we've got our NDA. We're ready to start the next step. We're just going to jump back up a level, Rupert, if you wouldn't mind. So the next step is actually before we generate the quote itself or generate any kind of contract, we need to create that opportunity. So let's just go and kick off that process. So we're going to go to automate. We've got an option here to create opportunity. Again, lots of Power Automate options in there, but typically you would string them together. It's just for the demo. We're going to give it a name. Yeah, okay. 365 adoption. We do a bit
I
of
don't
that.
think they need this, I'll be honest, Ben. I think they know what they're doing.
That's fair, in all fairness, yeah. But so we're just going to put this down as training. So we can see we put a few options here, and based on what opportunity type, that might generate a different sort of quoting template, for instance. Okay. So let's just go and click inside that one.
Now, Ben, I know that we're going to create a folder here to represent that opportunity, but for maybe more complex opportunities, might want to use Microsoft Teams. Is that a possibility? Could we create this in Microsoft Teams rather than creating it here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a few things around this. And ultimately, because of the power of Power Automate, you can define what kind of structure that you're going to use to do things like collaborating and working on. Let's say if it was a bid, then yes, you might want to create a Microsoft team because, bid is like a mini project or even a large project in some cases. In this case, we're creating that folder with the details inside it. And this, for those of you that use Dynamics CRM and are familiar with how Dynamics CRM stores its documents, it should be a fairly familiar approach. You've got your clients with some standard information, and then you'll have a folder for each of the opportunities to easily segregate them. So if we go inside that subfolder that's been generated here.
It's followed a naming format, Ben, here. So that's a great start.
Yeah, exactly. So again, all of these things can be defined. That's the real power of literally the power. It's in the name. The power of Power Automate is that it gives you the ability to define your own rules and passes that more to sort of business users that can define them, as opposed to lots of heavy, detailed, complex coding. We can see that this spreadsheet, this training spreadsheet, has been generated. And again, we've still got the same information that's been inherited from the document set. So let's just go in and open it up. So that is a rather nice looking spreadsheet there, Rupert.
I've been working a while on this one, actually.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. If only they all looked as nice as that. But anyway, so we can see a couple of details have been populated already. So we've got the client in there. We've got the engagement name. That information has been drawn through from when we created the opportunity. Got a few more bits of information to fill out though. So let's just do that. So I put a start date in.
3rd of August sounds pretty good.
Why not?
0308 2022. And let's do it for 3 months.
Perfect. So what day rate we're going to put in, Rupert?
Well, that's easy. We only have 1 day rate, so I'll pop that there. Now it's 900. And on-site expenses. Now, as it happens, Law 365 are only about a couple of miles from where I live, so I could probably get there for about £5.
Oh, right. Okay. Now, so you're going to do the training in that case, Rupert?
Okay. So Ben, let's put our standard rate for on-site expenses.
Maybe we could go back to the standard then. Yeah, exactly. All right. So we've put some of these summary details. And again, part of the reason why we're using Excel in this case is that Excel is perfect at building up all of these complex calculations that we need. It's quite easy to generate a template that can be reused and referenced. You don't have to go through and create clever, complex Power Apps or anything like that to generate these kind of tools. And the other thing actually is that for some of you that may be worried about the fact that people can fill in areas that they can't, of course, you can lock down parts of the sheet so that people can only fill in the bits that they're allowed to. But anyway, moving that to one side, we've got, I don't know if you can even zoom in a little bit there, Rupert, to make it a little bit easier to see. Yeah. So we're going to go into the task breakdown. So again, this is the thing that ties into what your service catalog is. We can talk about some of those considerations in a minute, but for the purpose of this, in this case, for a training proposal, we've got a predefined set of available services that we provide. And then we're going to enter in how many of those things that we're going to do. So I think for the moment, Rupert, let's just go in and put, I think we'll do a planning workshop. Maybe some end user training content prep and some training sessions.
Let's put some 12 sessions there. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. And then maybe some refresher videos as well. I think that could be useful. Okay. So we can see as we've entered all of those things in, using the sort of standard calculations as you'd expect in Excel, it's generated a total amount. Now, I must admit, Rupert, I'm not sure we need to do 90-minute training sessions on site. We could probably use Microsoft Teams for that, actually.
Okay.
Okay.
So expenses.
Yeah, the expense has been dealt with. We've updated that figure. So obviously this is in SharePoint. I don't need to push save. It's done it all for me. The next step is to say, okay, well, we're going to go and generate the actual statement of work Word document based on the information that's been put together. So let's go back into our SharePoint area a minute.
Okay, and I'm just going to make a note. So the total was 7260. So let's hope that all carries through.
Double check our homework, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Good. So we've filled in our training sheet. Next step is to go and actually generate the contract itself. So we're going to go in here, create contract. Now this time around, unlike some of the previous steps, we don't really have any kind of input that we need to put. And again, this is the kind of thing that could be kicked off automatically if we needed it to. So what this is going to do is take this information, extract the details from the spreadsheet and pass it off to the document generation service that we're using, which will then inject all the right values and generate that contract for us. And we can see what that output looks like in a few seconds. It normally takes a few seconds. I'm just going to double check it, make sure it's all doing its thing properly. That's running, typically runs within about 10 seconds, but it must know that we're doing the live version of the demo. And then, no, there we go. Should be good. So let's just do a quick refresh. So we can see we've got that document generated. We're using our standard naming convention for how we name our statements of work as they go through. Again, we've got that shared metadata that's being used, but now it's time to look inside the document itself. Rupert, could I just suggest, because it'll be a bit easier to read, maybe just download the document actually, I think, because just for the purpose of the, because we're in a demo environment, I think it looks a little bit better if we just open it in native Word and we don't want to get, authentication prompts, etc. Let's give that a second to load up.
Yeah. One of the joys of obviously being a Microsoft SharePoint partner is that we have multiple Office 365 environments, and then
so
it's very confused.
It's switching between demos and normal, etc., etc. So again, as with the NDA, we can see that the right details have been populated in here, those summary statements. Let's go a bit further down. Okay, we'll keep going past the table of contents. So again, we can see here now, we've actually got a dynamic list of bullet points that have been generated based on the options that we chose. And again, we can see a bit further down, we've got the dates, we've got the period, and including that fixed fee. So we can see we double checked our homework earlier. We had a look at the spreadsheet. We can see the right number has actually been entered in. Okay. So let's go a bit further down as well. Now, actually, this is kind of visualized quite well in the left-hand navigation pane a little bit. But what we can see is that the various different paragraphs that we would have in our template that describe what would actually be done within those various different offerings, all of that has been injected dynamically. And any of the paragraphs that we don't want to use, we didn't include any power user training, for instance, all of those things have been removed. So if you were doing this based on a standard template, again, you'd have all these different sections that you might have highlighted and you're relying on the salesperson or the account manager to sort of remember and remove the bits that are relevant, but all of this has been done for you. So all of those figures have been inserted. As we go a bit further down, we've got the total's been added in there. So the right number of days has been added, whether it's on site. And again, keep going a bit further down. We've got some boilerplate that you expect to be in the template. But then we come into the key bit, which is really important that we don't get this wrong. So we've got the right figure. And because of the way that we do our projects, we always do everything fixed price. So we've got a couple of milestones in here, an on start and an on completion. And the right calculation has been given. So it's, figured out what the right milestone breakdown is. And all of that has been dynamically injected into the document here.
Now, Ben, that is fantastic. I'm a little bit suspicious, but this is just a document hidden behind the scenes.
Is it just
Do you
a
think
bit
we could
too good to be true, do you think?
maybe, do you think we could generate another one, but just make it quite different so we know this is
Just
really
to
doing what it says on the tin?
Prove. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, we don't really like to do smoke and mirrors too much. So let's just maybe delete that one and we'll redo it.
Okay. So I think, oh, it doesn't like it. There we go. Right, we're in there. I'm just going to make this one really simple. We're just going to do a workshop. We're going to do nothing else, so it's quite easy to see. And we're going to keep it on site though.
Okay, right.
And I'm going to come out of that.
So we should just have a single item for a planning workshop. Okay, let's see.
Well, that's what I'm hoping for.
Are we making it up as we go along, or is this actually real?
Now, we deleted the old version of a document so I can clearly see when the new one's been generated, but you've obviously got version control in there. So this was yourself, then it would create a new version of the existing one. So you've got that version history of quotes. And we appreciate sometimes that clients want a suffix or something in there so they know which version they're working with. So we could change the file name each time and put maybe some business rules around that. I think I'm right in saying that, Ben, aren't I?
Yeah.
Good.
So I'm just going to give that a few seconds. It's still running. It's not quite finished yet, but it shouldn't take long. There we go. Should be good. Just a quick refresh.
Okay. Now this is where the pressure mounts up. So
Right.
it's created a new document. And as you can see on the modified date, so it's just been created a few seconds ago. So let's do what you said before, Ben, which is download it. And that way we know that we're going to get a good
visual read, I think.
visual experience. Yeah. Now, one thing I did notice, Ben, the table of contents looks the same.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. So that is one limitation that we have, and it's often a bit of a limitation in Word documents and, in general, actually, which is, you often need to do something to prompt to update the table of contents. So our document generation tool, it will inject all the right paragraphs, but we can't get Word itself to remember to go and update its table of contents in an automated way. As is the case in anything, when you're sending out these proposals, you've always got to just remember to update those table of contents. But now that we've updated it, we can see that the actual number of statements that's gone in has been reduced. So instead of having those sort of 3 or 4 options, we've just got the one. And in fact, yeah, we've only got the one bullet point, a planning workshop.
There it is.
Yeah, so the actual paragraph statement, in this case, it's just that one section. Again, if we go into the tasks, everything has gone and updated accordingly. And then finally, we go to the milestones. That's all been broken down. It looks like it's actually working for real, Rupert, doesn't it?
I'm convinced.
Okay.
Right. I don't think we need to save it. Ben, I'd be interested just to go a little bit behind the scenes of how this is all hanging together.
There's 2 key templates that we're working on. The training template itself. So maybe have a quick look at that a minute, Rupert, I think. Now, this is, pretty much what we saw earlier. We can see that there's a system generated placeholder. So we have a process that goes and updates that. And again, we've got our predefined sections here with all the calculation tables that we could add. The kind of thing that you might look to extend this on, though, is look at how some of those task breakdowns could be dynamically generated or populated based on your CRM system or SharePoint list or a lookup of the other services that you provide. In the case of the demo, we've just hard-coded the available options in here and built them into this very nice-looking template. One thing I would just call out, Rupert, if you click on the Automate tab a second, just there. So we're using something called Office scripts, and this is the thing that's going to support transferring some of the information out of the Excel template into the Power Automate process when we start generating those documents. So we create these scripts so that we can actually extract the right details in the right place and then go and pass that elsewhere. Okay. So let's come out of that one, have a look at the SOW template, I would suggest. when we look at the SOW, we can see that we've got these placeholders. Again, this is using a very specific syntax that the document generation service is aware of. Those of you that used Microsoft Quick Parts before, they're okay, but they have some limitations. This is far more capable for doing things like dynamically generating bullet points, doing formatting, and even doing things like inserting tables, etc. So we can see as we go in and add this, for each task that we have, go and put the summary in there. Again, we can see the start dates, we can do formatting around them, etc., and we can put those totals in. Now, if we go into the scope section, this is where it gets quite interesting. So we can see that, as we know, we had these 6 or 7 available types of services that we could provide. And based on what options we set, the right paragraphs were either dynamically included or not. Now, in the template, we can see that we've got all of the paragraphs that we want, all of the wording, etc., etc. But notice, if anyone can see that, there's a little if statement: if include planning workshop, if include end user training prep. So what we're doing is tying that in. So based on the original spreadsheet, if that was included, then inject that appropriate section. If it's not included, just hide it completely, just remove it from the document entirely.
And can I ask a question about that?
Of course.
So I can see how that would work if you've got maybe, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 services. But if you've got 100 things, it doesn't feel like it's going to scale so well.
No, that's right. So again, it's getting the right trade-off here. So where this works quite nicely is, we've already narrowed down that this is a training focused proposal as opposed to perhaps an intranet focused proposal. So one way of doing it is to have, multiple templates based on the different service that you add. But let's say maybe if you're in sort of construction, for instance, where you've got a large product suite that you want to include, then actually having that information, as I showed you before, referenced perhaps in a SharePoint list, and using some of the rich text formatting available on lists to be able to include those standard paragraph sections, that would be a way of doing it. So having something where your SharePoint list is kept up to date with your available product set from your CRM system, for instance, and then drawing that information in via the SharePoint lists and then passing them into tables like this. So again, as we start looking at the table, it looks a bit weird. It looks a little bit ugly, but of course, once it starts, once the right data is populated, it then formats appropriately. But we can see dynamically generating rows in our table based on the information that was passed in.
Perfect.
I think one final bit, Rupert, is just to talk about signatures quickly, actually, because if we just jump down to the very bottom, one of the questions you may have had is, how did it know where to inject the signature block? So as hopefully, if you can see here, we've got it in white text, but we've got this standard, or maybe not that one. Yeah, that's it. Put it in. Yeah, that's it. So we've injected this standard signature string here, which the connective signature tool is able to recognize and go, okay, if I see that phrase, put my signature there. Now, Adobe and DocuSign and Connective, they all have slightly different ways of working, but pretty much follow the same concept. They'll give you a phrase or a placeholder that you can reference to inject into your document template. And then when you pass it off to the signature tool, they'll know where to go and place that signature block.
Perfect, Ben. Look, time's getting on us. So let's just wrap up the considerations around document generation. So we talked about your services and, use products in here as well. So we talk about service groupings. Are we creating a training proposal, maybe a workshop proposal, or a different kind of proposal? So how do they group together, and what are the service and product line items which form under that? And what that's going to do then is help you think, well, how do we structure the proposal generation process? Do you need a spreadsheet? Obviously, that does support more complex calculations. It gives you flexibility. Particularly, earlier, Ben, you touched about, not having to write a Power App. I think a lot of people are thinking Power Apps are the only answer. This is a different way of approaching it. And obviously, you've got more flexibility to change it. You don't need to bring a developer in to go and change a spreadsheet. But obviously, with a Power App, you might need someone with some more advanced skills. So it's a different way of approaching it. Yeah. And I think, as you were saying before, Ben, is just because it's a spreadsheet doesn't mean it's a free-for-all. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. You can lock that spreadsheet down so that the person filling it in can only fill in those very specific fields that they're allowed to access.
Okay. And then the last piece was, where are you getting the information to build these proposals? Is it probably going to be a combination of templates, maybe something stored in SharePoint, and finally, third-party data? So how do we bring that all together and populate that document? So in closing, there's just 2 slides left. The first one is how we help. So we work with organizations and do a much more extended version of what you've seen today in our modern information management workshop. So that's thinking about automation. We're talking about intranets, document management, maybe that journey from moving from a file share to SharePoint, and answering that question, what tool do I use when? So one of the biggest things that we see is people saying, should I be using SharePoint? Should I be using Teams? Should I be using OneDrive? Or should I be using something else? And then following on from that, how do we adopt and get people to adopt new practice, the new solution? And how do we manage that ongoing success? Because we know that technology is moving and your organization is moving as well.
I hope you found that useful. Maybe gave you some ideas, some inspiration to what maybe you could do with SharePoint and the Power Automate platform. To find out more about what we do, either come and visit us at informationexp.com or go and explore our YouTube channel where you can find more of the videos and snippets from other webinars that we've done. Goodbye.